Okay, so today we're going to talk about something that's a huge part of the modern web, even if you don't always see it. It's called Vue JS. Now, its big tagline is the progressive framework. Sounds cool, right? But what does that actually mean? Like, for the developers building stuff and for us, the people using these apps every single day? Well, let's dive in and figure it out. You know those websites and apps you use all the time? The ones that just work. They feel super fast, everything's smooth, it's just really responsive. Have you ever stopped to think, how do they do that? What's going on behind the scenes to make it all feel so seamless? Well, a huge piece of that puzzle is a technology just like the one we're talking about today. So let's get right to it. What is Vue JS? First off, it's pronounced Vue, just like looking at something. And at its core, it's a tool, a JavaScript framework for building all those interactive parts of a website. But the real magic, the thing that defines it, is that whole progressive idea. It sounds a little jargony, I know, but trust me, this simple concept is the key to what makes Vue, well, Vue. Probably the easiest way to wrap your head around this progressive thing is to think about Legos. Seriously. Imagine you have a web page, right? You can just grab one little Vue brick and use it to add a tiny bit of interactivity to just one small part of that page. That's it. Or you can grab the whole box of bricks, snap them all together, and build a massive complex application, a whole city. It's totally up to you. It scales to whatever you need it to be. And that kind of flexibility, that's not some happy accident. It's completely intentional. It's by design. The whole philosophy of Vue is built on 3 core ideas or pillars. So let's break down what those are. All right, here they are: approachable, performant, and versatile. You can almost think of these as the 3 promises that Vue makes to anyone who decides to use it. They're the guiding principles behind basically every decision made in the framework. Okay, first up, approachable. And let me tell you, for developers, this is a huge deal. See, Vue doesn't make you start from scratch. It's built right on top of the stuff web developers already know and use every day. Plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You don't have to go learn some crazy new language or a whole new way of thinking. This means the learning curve is, well, way less of a cliff and more of a gentle slope. It's one of the friendliest frameworks to get started with, for sure. Next, we've got performant. Look, in the web world, speed is everything. Vue is built from the ground up to be fast, right out of the box. It's smart. It does all this clever optimization work behind the scenes, figuring out the absolute fastest way to update what you see on the screen. And what does that mean for the person building the app? It means they can focus on making cool stuff, not spending hours and hours trying to squeeze out a tiny bit more performance. And that brings us to the 3rd pillar, versatile. And here we are, right back to our Legos. See, Vue can be just that one little brick when you need it to be, a simple library. But it's also got this whole official ecosystem of other kits you can plug in. Things for handling navigation, managing data, all the complex stuff. So when you need it to, it can transform from a single brick into a powerful, full-blown framework. So where did this thing even come from? This is one of my favorite parts of the story, because Vue wasn't created in some giant corporate R&D lab. Nope, it has a really cool origin story that basically starts with one developer working at Google getting, well, kind of frustrated. So the whole journey kicked off pretty quietly back in 2013 with just one source code commit, a single line of code. By early 2014, it was out in the world for everyone to see. And from there, it just grew and grew. The really big moment came in 2020 with the release of Vue 3, which was a huge rewrite that really cemented its place as one of the top modern frameworks out there. And this quote from the creator, Evan You, really gets to the heart of why he built it. He was at Google working with this other framework called Angular, which is super powerful but also massive and complex. And he basically just thought, hey, what if I could just take the parts of this that I really, really like and get rid of all the extra baggage? What if I could build something really lightweight? And that's exactly what he did. And here's a little fun fact for you, something that I think shows the personality of the project. All the major version code names, they're named after classic anime and manga. You've got Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell, One Piece, even Slam Dunk. It's just a cool little nod to a culture that clearly inspires a lot of the people who work on and use Vue. Okay, so remember we talked about that versatile pillar? A lot of that comes from Vue's ecosystem. Because, let's be real, a modern web app is so much more than just putting stuff on a page. You've got to manage all the data, handle how users navigate around, all that complex stuff. One of the biggest hurdles in any big application is something called state management. The best way to think about it is like the app's brain, or its shared memory. It's the one central place where all the important data lives, so all the different parts of the app can see it and use it. And for Vue, that brain has evolved. It started with a system called Vuex, but now the modern official choice is its successor, Pinia. And when you look at the data, the shift from the old to the new is, well, it's not subtle. The 2025 State of Vue JS report shows that Pinia's adoption has just exploded. It's over 80% now. And Vuex, it's still hanging around in about 38% of projects, but that's mostly in older legacy apps that haven't been updated. It's super clear the community has voted with their code and embraced the new way.
So the bottom line here is really simple. If you're starting a new Vue project today, you use Pinia. End of story. It's the official recommended solution. Vuex was absolutely critical to Vue's history, but it's basically in maintenance mode now. It'll get bug fixes, but no new features. The future is Pinia.
Okay, so with all that in mind, where does Vue actually stand in the tech world today? It's definitely a mature, super popular, and widely loved framework. But like any technology, it's not perfect. It's got some huge wins, but also some real challenges it's facing. Let's start with the successes, because this first number is pretty staggering. A full 96% of Vue developers surveyed are using Vue 3. That is wild. For a technology to get that level of adoption on its latest major version, it just shows how incredibly successful and healthy that transition has been for the whole community. But like I said, it's not all perfect. That very same report paints a more complicated picture. Almost a quarter of developers, about 22%, said they feel like Vue's ecosystem still has some holes that need patching, especially when you compare it to some of its biggest competitors. So what are we talking about here? What are these gaps? Well, developers pointed to a few key things. First, a lack of big official libraries of pre-built user interface components. Think things like MUI or Radix in the React world. They also mentioned a need for better tools to help test their apps and a bigger demand for solutions built specifically for huge enterprise-scale projects. And really, all of this, the successes, the challenges, it points to a much bigger conversation that's happening across the entire web development world right now. There's this constant tug of war going on. On one side, you have these powerful frameworks like Vue that give you a ton of structure and features. And on the other side, you have the web browsers themselves, which are getting more and more powerful every single year. Which, of course, leads us to the big final question, the one that's on pretty much everyone's mind. As the web platform itself, the browsers, get powerful enough to do things that we used to need a framework for, what does that mean for the future of tools like Vue? What's their role going to be in the next 5-10 years of the web? Honestly, that's the multi-million-dollar question, and the entire industry is watching to see how it plays out.